Good Shabbos. Good Shabbat. How has your week been? Mine's been really busy, even though I'm quarantined. I hope some of you got down to the beach and you're having a good time. There's always a way to make something better if it isn't good enough. And that's your assignment for the summer. But boy, do we miss you. We're going to begin our service in just a minute, but I want to tell you first that when we get to the story I'm going to tell, everybody's named it and others Rabbi Reruns, because I thought it would be nice this summer to take some of the stories you liked best. And by you, I mean those who have heard it, those who have been at Micah for a while. And those who haven't, since you liked it best, I figured they will too. So let's begin on page 2 with Lahadodi. We know probably, maybe 50 different tunes. You may know one or two. But I want to tell you where the song comes from and who wrote it. It was the 16th century, which is the 1500s, in Safat, which is a fabulous, fabulous town in Israel. I say that because there are musicians and some wonderful artists and real strong religion and a sense of almost acting out as you believe in what you're saying. For this, in Safat, on Shabbat, Erev Shabbat, all the men and the boys got dressed in white robes and together singing, and of course singing this song, they went down to the fields and marched around before they began to pray. One of the men who was marching around wrote this song. His name is Rav Solomon Halevi Alkabetz. And it's funny, his last name is Alkabetz because he did something with the alphabet. When he wrote the song, he put the initials of his name in the beginning of the first 3 stanzas. So now that you know a little about it, let's sing Lachadoti. Join us on page 2.
Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom u'mevorach. Bo'im b'shalom, atem ekbala, nam lesimcha u'tola. Tov le'munei ha'seula, bo'im chala, bo'im chala.
page 3 with our Aleph reading.
There are days when I want only to get things for myself.
I measure failure by what I do not have. On Shabbat, I try to think not about getting, but about sharing.
There are days when I use nature as if it never can be exhausted. On Shabbat, I stand in wonder before all creation and promise to protect it.
There are days when I act as if we care nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, I try to remember that justice is my responsibility and a better world my goal.
So I welcome Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. Please rise as we continue with the Baruch Hu on page 4.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed.
We continue on page 5 with our Bet reading.
Our God, you are as near as the air I breathe, yet farther than the farthermost star.
Help me to see your guiding power in distant galaxies and assign myself. I want to show my gratitude for all your generous gifts by the good use to which I put them.
Then, like the changing seasons and the nights and days, you will be in my life, and I'll be holy as you are holy.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Hamaliv Aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, whose word makes evening fall.
We'll continue with our olive reading on page 7. Our God, you are one. You have made each of us different, yet we are one.
Teach us to respect each other.
Not in spite of our differences, not because of our sameness, but simply because you created us all.
Then we will be connected to you and each other by a bond that cannot break.
We will be one, as you are one. Please join us singing the Shema and Ve'ahavta beginning on page 8.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Asher Elohim Tzavcha Hayom Al Levavecha V'shinatam Levanecha V'dibarta b'am V'shivtecha b'beitecha Uvlechtecha b'derech U'shachbecha u'vkumecha U'kshartam le'ot al yadecha V'hayu letotafot b'neinecha U'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha U'vishamecha L'ma'an tizkeru Va'asitem et kol mitzvotai V'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeitechem me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Now let's turn to page 12. Mi chamocha. Who is like God? Is what we ask. You know what the answer is? I bet you can tell me. Everybody tell me, who is like God? Nobody. You are right. See how much you know? Miriam and all the women, when they got across the Reed Sea, which we now call the Red Sea, sometime you'll learn about that too. They took their timbrels and their instruments and they danced, singing, "Who is like God?" Miriam didn't get across and turn around and say to everybody, "Come on, we're terrific, we made it across." No, she thanked God. We forget that we walk with God, or we don't even know sometimes. But every time something wonderful happens, remember, there's one other force that made it happen, that gave you the ability to do what you did. And you know what that force is. I don't even have to say the name. I'm so sorry there isn't somebody for me to dance with next summer. Yeah, save your dances with me till next summer. Let's go. Page 12, Mi Chamocha.
We continue with our bet reading on page 13.
Eternal God, help us live with understanding and love. Each day may we know friendship and peace. Watch over us when we are together. Be close when we are alone. Through all the days and nights of our lives, spread over us your shelter and your love. Please join us for Hashki Venu on page 14.
Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom Lehamid Ushmor Tzeitenu Uvoenu L'chaim v'shalom Be'ata ve'ad olam Ashivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'halidenu Shomeinu L'chaim Everything shall be alright Adonai Everything Eloheinu L'shalom V'halidenu Shomeinu Go to sleep tonight L'chaim Every holiday I'll show you everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright when we go to sleep tonight.
And now we turn to page 16. You know it's here. Vishamru. You know, we dance, we jump, we do so many things. We're so busy during Vishamru that we forget what it means. Or maybe you never knew. It means we shall keep the Sabbath. And there's a beautiful phrase, not in the song, but what the scholars have said for years, more than the Jews keep Shabbat. Shabbat keeps the Jews. What do we mean by that? Yes, many of us observe Shabbat, and it's so wonderful to have one day when you don't have to do everything you do the rest of the week. But how does Shabbat keep the Jews? I'll tell you, unless if we were together, you could tell me, I'm sure. And that is, when we keep Shabbat, we remember that we are Jewish. We remember, and we're so grateful for that day of rest and peace and doing what you love to do and not what you have to do. That when we do that, we remember it's Shabbat. So we are keeping it as it is keeping me. One word about what we do with Vishamru. I have been to so many B'nai Mitzvah, and at least half of them or more, when it comes to Vishamru, the rabbi will mention, I know that many of you jump at this point, but don't do that on these chairs because they close up. Or don't do this on the chairs because they're brand new. And it's so wonderful to see that people all over New England, at least, know what we do with Vishamru. So, with your parents' permission to step on the furniture, or if you got a piano bench, let's do it.
Vishamru b'nei Israel et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledoratam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Israel et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledoratam berit olam. B'nei Israel, oti ve'olam, v'shamru b'nei תעברי עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושם שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושם שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. One more time, ושם שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם.
We continue on page 17 with our bait reading.
Ever-present God, teach us that you are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubts. You are the still, clear voice within us.
Therefore, when doubt troubles us and worry clouds our minds, we look inward for the answer to our prayers.
There we may find you, and there find courage, insight, and strength, and let our prayers bring us closer to one another, that all who seek you will be strong and confident throughout their lives.
Please rise for the Amidah beginning on page 18.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor, Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chazdei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atarav Lehoshia, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Tzomech Noflim Verofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umechayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umidom Elach, Elohe, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata l'chayot hakol, Baruch ata Adonai, mechayei hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yechalu chasela. Baruch ata Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
We continue with our bet reading on page 21. For the good in us which calls us to a better life, we give thanks. For the strength to improve the world with our hearts and hands, we give praise. For the peace in us which leads us to work for peace, we are grateful.
For all these, we give thanks to the Creator of all life and nature. Please join us on singing on page 22.
Say Adonai Eloheinu, ve'amecha Yisrael, u'tefilata ve'ahava tikabeh, u'tehi l'ratzon.
On page 24, we have Shalom Rav. A lot of peace we're asking for. And you'll see if you read much of the words that go with this, it's we who are asking for peace. Peace is a very large item. And we and so many other countries, when they can, are praying for peace. A few aren't. They'd rather have war and fighting. But we don't ask ourselves to work for peace. We're busy asking God in this prayer or song, or we're not old enough or not enough of us. How can we make peace in the world? Well, we don't have to make peace in the world, but we sure should be making peace within ourselves. I can't stand him. I'm never going to talk to him again. No. He's got something bothering him, so he said the wrong thing. I can forgive that. He's got a lot of good qualities. We make peace When we don't start the argument, we make peace. When we stop the argument, we make peace. When we make friends with someone else, doesn't have to be your best friend, but if your whole classroom and your home are at peace, that goes right out through the windows to the community and out again to someplace in the world. So as we sing, please, God, give us a lot of peace. Let's remember to say to ourselves, please me, let's give a lot of peace. I can do it too.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon lecho hashalom. Shalom Rabba Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rabba Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'necha levarech et Amcha Yisrael. Bechol leil ubechol shah bishlomecha. Shalom Rabba Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rabba Yisrael Amcha Tasim Tasim Leolam, Tasim Leolam.
You know, so much of the Shabbat service has been written for us. Throughout the ages, this didn't just happen when a group of old men, because women weren't allowed, sat down and decided, we'll put this prayer first and this prayer second. It's over centuries that the traditional Shabbat service was put together. And so we, as modern Jews, do most of the service. And what do? We read the prayers that these people wrote over the centuries. Hopefully, each time we read it, we have a new meaning for it. Because what you were in last week may not be where you are today. And we read it, and we read it, and that's why we put in a lot of prayers, if you wanted them, that were well written and might mean something to you. But really, this and just a few others is the most important prayer you say, because we don't follow anybody's words. We make it up ourselves according to what happened during the week. And if we're grateful that we've been swimming or whatever it is, I won't even suggest what you're thinking. You have to be the one to think it and say it privately and silently. And now for my story. This is kind of a serious one, but it's one of the most interesting. How do I know? Because you said it was one of our favorites. No. Because you said it was one of your favorites. If your parents are around, it might be a good idea for them to be with you too, because they probably were a little closer to World War II than you were. And that's where this story starts and ends. In World War II, there were so many who were injured that they had to plan places for the injured to get well. It's something like the states, that all the states had to make special new places for the coronavirus problem. Well, this was World War II. And there was a warehouse that became a hospital. And the long-term patients, the one who were going to be there to get well for a long time, they were on the second floor of this warehouse, now a hospital, and those who were going to go in and out more quickly were on the first floor. The second floor had a pointed ceiling. You know the kind I mean, almost like a loft. And there was one window up there, and about 8, all men, patients. One of them was getting so much better that he could sit in the one wheelchair. The nurses knew, as they helped them into it, that it was painful for him to be moved, and even more painful to sit in that wheelchair all day. But they wheeled him to the one window, and there, for the whole day, he would look out the window and tell the most wonderful stories about what he saw. And the other 7 men spent their day listening and imagining and maybe thinking of their hometown. So he was doing a real mitzvah. And as he entertained all the others, he made those stories really interesting. For example, he told every time a different story about the postman who was always being chased by a dog, and how the postman would stop at every house and have a conversation with the people in that house. He told of a little girl who every day sat quietly in the park across the street, playing with her doll. And he told of all the housewives, and each time he told it differently, who stood in front of the butcher shop and were gossiping about one thing or another. And he told about the boys he saw each day were showing off their gymnastic skills by walking on a very thin fence down the street. And those who listened loved it because he kept them busy thinking about what he was saying all week long. And even though he hurt, he wouldn't stop. One of the other 7, we didn't give them names. The one at the window, the mitzvah guy, we can call Larry. And the one I'm telling you about now, we can call Lenny. Now let's see if you'll remember. the whole time that Larry was telling these stories, Lenny was getting more and more jealous because he was the second healthiest patient in that attic hospital, and he wanted to be the one to get into that chair and go to the window and tell everybody what he saw. But he had another job. Right beside his bed, there was a bell button, it was called. You pressed the button, and a bell rang downstairs so that the nurse could come up and give Larry a little medicine. And every time that Larry stopped and paused and maybe turned a little white and looked really like he was going to faint or something, Lenny would press the button, and the nurse would come from downstairs and give the medicine to Larry, and he would be fine and continued. This was very important. It was the only way that Larry could continue to live. Well, one day, he was at the window and talking, and all of a sudden he stopped. He did more than pause this time. He really stopped. And he got white, and he felt sick, and his head drooped. And everybody looked at Lenny to press that button. Well, Lenny put his hand on the button, but he didn't press it. And by the time the nurses came up to check on it all, Larry couldn't be stirred, and Larry was gone. He died. So now there was an empty wheelchair the next day. And Lenny was so excited, he didn't know what to do with himself. Now it's going to be his turn, because Larry wasn't here anymore. So the nurses helped to put Lenny into the wheelchair, and they wheeled him over to the window. His heart was beating so fast because he was so excited that it was his turn to do this. So he put his hands on the windowsill, and he pushed himself up so he could see clearly. And all he saw was the brick wall on the other side of the window. Do you get it? If your parents were watching, it's a good thing to talk about. And what does it mean to you? Larry was keeping himself interested and alive and pleased because he was doing a mitzvah, telling stories to everyone else. And they were really good stories. Larry lived those days beautifully. He was doing something for somebody else. So how do you spend yours? And now, Brodsky and Dandy have a song just about the story.
Sometimes the world is a dark place, and it's hard to keep a smile on your face. But you are not alone. I am not alone. build each other up. Brick by brick by brick by brick by brick, we'll build each other up.
And now as we come to the end of our service, we turn to page 28, where we find the Aleinu. Remember, that's the one that the rabbis, as through the ages they were making up the service, that's the one that they put in because they wanted to pray a little longer. Since I have a feeling that this was enough for you, we turn to page 28 for the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach Adon hakol, l'ateit gdula li'otzeh bereshit, shehu noteh shamayim ve'yotzeh haaretz, u'moshe min ha'rov ha'shamayim mima'ah, u'shchinatu zo b'gavei meromim, u'Eloheinu einod, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech Machei HaMachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, le'melech al kol ha'aretz, bayom hahu, yigeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
In a minute, we're going to say the mourner's Kaddish. But I bet you don't know where it comes from and why we say it. Let me explain. There isn't a word in the mourner's Kaddish about death or dying. And this is how this prayer came to be. Many, many years ago, and still today, rabbis and students were together studying in small groups. Some of the rabbis were so wonderful that the students wanted to know them and do their very best. So when they were studying Talmud and they came to the end of a Masechta, a large portion of Talmud, they were happy that they were finished. And they began to make up this prayer here again. They praise God, not just themselves for the work they've done. God, you are so wonderful, terrific, exalted. And that's what you see in many ways in the Kaddish. That became a habit that students said this prayer, honoring and exalting God at the end of a portion of study. And then one of their favorite Rebbes died. And when they were at the gravesite, the students just automatically said that prayer. They were so grateful for the life of this teacher who was so wonderful. And then a little later on, the parents said, hey, that's an important prayer. You can say it for your teachers. You should say it for us. We're your teachers too. And that's how it got to be the prayer for anybody they loved who was no longer with them. I thought that was very interesting. Later, the people who wrote the service put it at the end of the service, just like in the beginning. It was at the end of study. And so we rise with thoughts of gratitude for the people around us who we love. to say the Monas Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yurtei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei techol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv v'yamru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtavach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaled v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha b'richu. Le'ela mikol berchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, ta'miran v'alma v'yamru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen.
But before we close, we all would like to thank the excellent readers who are a part of our service. If you want to be a reader, just email Kate and she'll find a place to put you in. And now I think Mark has a few words.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Lipoff and Daniel Brodsky and Kate for your music this evening. Thanks everybody for joining us. It was a great service and we appreciate you all getting together for Shabbat. We'll be doing it again in 2 weeks. Next week will be another edition of the Moose Cove's Lodge Show, which we hope you will join us for. And this Sunday is my birthday. And usually on my birthday at camp, we have 800 donuts for breakfast from Dunkin' Donuts. So for Sunday morning, we're asking everybody to be in the spirit of my birthday by buying Dunkin' Donuts for their kids for breakfast. And we will be having them here as well. Also, evening activity for my birthday on Sunday night is the Peter Bois magic show for the whole family at 7 o'clock, and we hope you will join us for that. Make sure you have a deck of cards as well, because he's going to teach you how to do tricks yourself at home. Now we're going to close out our service with Oseh Shalom and Shabbat is here, and afterwards we'll unmute everyone so they can say hello, and we can all talk to each other for a few minutes before we close out the session. Shabbat Shalom.
Oseh Shalom b'mroma, u'yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom b'mroma, u'yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom b'mroma, u'yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oseh shalom b'mroma, yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'mroma, yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'mroma, yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat is here, Shabbat is here. I'm so glad that Shabbat is here. Oh, candles burning bright on a Friday night. I'm so glad that Shabbat is here. Shabbat Shalom, Camp Micah. Shabbat Shalom, Camp Micah. Shabbat Shalom, Camp Micah.